Wonderful. Hello, for those of you that are just joining, welcome, and we'll just wait a couple minutes for everybody to get in. All right, I think we'll get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to NYU Stern and the MS in FinTech student panel. I'm so thrilled to see so many of you joining us here today. My name is Bronwen Sanders, and I'm a director of admissions for the MS in FinTech program, and I am joined by my colleague, Prachi, assistant director on the team, who will also be helping with this webinar. Again, thank you for being here today. We're so excited to deliver a webinar to you featuring 3 of our esteemed current students that are part of our inaugural cohort of MSFT. So over the next 40 or 45 minutes or so, they're going to be sharing their experiences in the program so far. You will hear their individual stories and their professional journeys. And then at the end, you'll also have some time to ask them some questions. But if you'd allow me, I'd like to provide a very brief overview of the MS in FinTech program here at NYU Stern. So the MSFT program is a 1-year part-time program, and we've designed it with working professionals in mind. So over the course of the 1-year time frame, the entire cohort of students will attend 1 live online module and then 6 in-person modules that take place at NYU Stern and in 2 rotating global modules. NYU Stern faculty, selected global faculty, and leaders of industry in the FinTech space teach at all the modules. So in total, the academic modules require about 7 weeks vacation or flexible work time. Upon completion of all modules and successful presentation of a capstone project, graduates are awarded a Master of Science in FinTech. So we have 1 intake per year, and we're currently accepting applications for the class of 2025 that begins this May of 2024. So here you can see a breakdown of our module schedule. You can see that each module takes place in person with your cohort, with the exception of module 4 in December that will be held in an online format. The remaining modules will be in person and an in-person experience and an opportunity to engage with your cohort and the faculty in person. In between the module sessions, you'll still be engaged with the program through online readings and assignments, either to prepare for an upcoming session or to integrate the learnings from a previous session. And we estimate this work to be about 25 hours per week and all activities completed asynchronously. So you can see here also that the calendar year, it's spread out the modules between the years 2024 and 2025. So that way you're able to balance your vacation or flexible work time between 2 different years. And here I'd like to walk you through the admissions process, which is broken down into 2 steps: the preliminary information stage and the formal application. So the first step is to submit the preliminary information form with your resume attached. And you may have already completed this step, but once we determine that you've met the prerequisites for the program, you can move forward to the formal application. So once you feel comfortable doing so, our process is both straightforward and personal. There's usually not one part of an application that will make or break your candidacy. So we recommend that you focus on the entire story you're presenting to the admissions committee. You can see here there's a few items associated with the application, which we will ask you to submit, and that is an application fee, an updated resume, 2 essays, your official transcripts in English, 1 letter of recommendation, copy of your passport. And you'll see here that, please note that the GMAT, GRE are generally not required on the initial application, but we do reserve the right to ask for them if we feel they're needed to make a more well-informed decision. And also, please note that you may submit your application for initial review, even if you're waiting on recommendations or your transcripts to be processed. And then the admissions committee may invite you for a final Zoom interview by invitation. So we are almost at our deadline to apply now for the class of 2025 for this coming May. The final deadline is April 5th. But we will still continue to accept applications after that date, but please do reach out directly after April 5th to our team to let us know you'd like to apply. And here you can contact our team anytime, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. And here is a QR code for our preliminary information form, or you can go right to the formal application. Thank you for allowing me just those few minutes. And here I'd like to get to the heart of our presentation with our student panel. And I want to say thank you so much. So exciting to be with all of you today. And what I'd like to do is maybe just start by having each of you, on the top of my screen. I'll start with Bailey. Bailey, if you could maybe just introduce yourself in terms of where you work, your current location in the world, your company title. That would be fantastic.
Of course. Thanks so much, Bronwen. And hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining. Excited to be here. So my name is Bailey Jensen. As Bronwen mentioned, I'm part of the class of 2024, which I think graduation is now like 6 weeks away or something, but who's counting, right? I am located in Toronto. I am American. I've been here in Canada for about 2 years now. And I'm the Assistant Director of Data Partnerships at Moody's, the ratings agency. So I look at a lot of our alternative data options and try to figure out strategic partnerships for Moody's. I've been there for about 4 years.
Thank you. Thank you. Meredith?
Sure. Thanks, Bronwen. I'm Meredith Baker. I am currently located in Chicago. I'm at JP Morgan. I'm a vice president at JP Morgan, but I've only been there for a few months. Before that, I was at a fintech startup, which is actually what brought me to the program. And then I found out that it was a lot easier to have a corporate job while I was in the program. So currently doing business management at JP Morgan for the commercial bank.
That's great. Thank you. Last but not least, Cyril.
Thanks, Bronwen. Yeah, good morning, I think it is. We're just on good afternoon in New York, depending on where you are in the world. My name is Cyril. It's good to be here. Thanks, Bronwen, and the team, and Meredith and Bailey. Good to see you again, and look forward to catching up in person in a couple of weeks. Yeah, my name is Cyril. I'm based in Johannesburg in South Africa. I'm the Managing Director for Risk Management at Marsh McLennan. Marsh McLennan is the largest global risk advisor. Our headquarters are in New York City. We are listed on the New York Stock Exchange, and I look after the portion of our business across Africa that helps large listed businesses with their risk and advisory requirements, specifically related to the transfer of risk, such as insurance and so on. So yeah, that's me.
Thank you. Thank you. So Cyril, since you're already talking to you, can you tell us, this time last year, what prompted you or motivated you to pursue the MS in FinTech program at Stern?
It's so interesting, Ron, because my journey in kind of arriving to MSFT was probably over about a year, where I'd investigated a number of programs across the piece. MSFT was one of them. I'd say that you guys know, but I cheated on you before and looked at kind of one or two other ones or other opportunities. And
Sure.
the reason MSFT kind of stood out for me were a couple of reasons. So the first was common amongst competitors. One is that it's in the US market. The second is that there's an international cohort of people and there's global exposure. So the US market I highlight because of Wall Street's important in finance. And you forget about the fin component, i.e. that financial component of financial technology, which is so key. Obviously, I think from a brand perspective, NYU, quality recognition, and also an understanding, having researched just the breadth and depth of kind of academic rigor and professionals that we have. Our professors have been really, really amazing, and that was also part of it. And then I also think, for me, it was kind of the modular structure of the program. So the ability to have an in-person experience was key for me. I think we were talking about it before we came on camera. This connectivity and being able to get to know people and spend time with people and spar with people. Half of the learning is from the different experience of the people in the classroom. So I think NYU's program, its structure, its quality of academic professors and so on. And then the final one I would mention before handing it over is just in terms of my own career path. So I wanted a deeper technology and understanding related to finance and financial services, which I've been in my life. But I wanted to pursue a general management track or continue to pursue a general management track. And I felt that the MSFT gave you the option to do both. If you wanted to specialize, there's that ability. But if you want to kind of augment your existing knowledge, it provided me with that too. And it was certainly unique in the market for programs that will have over at the time.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Thank you. Bailey, can I ask you what motivated you to pursue it?
Absolutely. So I had a bit of a different experience than Zuriel. I didn't painstakingly look for a year and evaluate all sorts of different programs, although I did my research. And for me, the MSFT program, it was at the time I was looking, was one of the only actual Master of Science degree programs offered in financial technology. A lot of the other programs were certificate programs or, just kind of like boot camp type programs. And I was really interested, as Zuriel had mentioned, in that level of academic rigor to actually go and pursue a master's degree. So that was one of the big things that motivated me to join. And I think when you think about fintech, especially, I had worked in both and have worked in both legacy financial firms and, startups, both in product and kind of positioning and marketing. And I think for me, especially now working at Moody's, I'm not sure how many on the call are familiar with Moody's, but it's been around for over 100 years and providing risk analysis for financial decision-making. And I think as we've been entering this new kind of era of technology-enabled decisioning, trying to stay on the forefront of how technology can help with that, while also recognizing that we have been doing our modeling and our financial analysis for the last 100 years, in a lot of ways, very similarly to how we were doing it originally. And that's just kind of across the board. So speaking with trying to figure out how we can actually maximize what it is that we're doing, but bridging that gap between technology professionals that we're bringing in, that have maybe been at tech firms or that, kind of speak tech, so to speak,
Right.
and sort of those legacy, financial employees that I work with and my colleagues, and bridging the gap between those two types of different conversations. I find that I needed really the opportunity to act as a translator between those two groups of people, because they do speak very different languages. And the fintech program I knew would be really great at positioning me for that. So that was one of I would say, the main reason for pursuing this program. And then the other thing is, before I hand it over to Meredith, is if you look at the course description, it is not like, I think people think of fintech, they think of oh, it's decentralized finance and it's Bitcoin and it's this. But if you look at the program schedule and you look at all of the different classes, that is only a very small portion of what it is that we are learning. I mean, not very small, but it is a smaller portion of what it is that we're learning. There are a lot of other things that go into fintech. And I think that the program really had the potential to open a number of different doors depending on what it is that you're interested in. And it really speaks to a lot of facets of fintech in a way that, you know, I had not really seen anywhere else. So that was ultimately what motivated me to apply and study here.
That's great. No, Bailey, I wrote that down because I want to revisit that
Sure,
that
sure.
comment you made. So thank you for bringing that up. Meredith, what do you?
Sure.
You
I'll
could
try
tell
to-
me what motivated you would be great.
Yeah, I'll try to keep this concise. I was in banking for 6 years, so I knew a lot about old school banking. I was at JP Morgan. It's like the most old school bank that you can be at. Went to a fintech startup. I was brought into the startup as the person with industry knowledge, which was great, but I still had to communicate that industry knowledge to engineers and figure out how to develop products with them. And so I quickly realized my gap in technical knowledge. At the time, I was contemplating getting an MBA. I couldn't really get over the hurdle of that price tag and taking 2 years off of work. But I didn't want to do an executive MBA. And so I was looking at other options for a master's program. NYU was the only one that had the fintech master's program specifically. Obviously, Stern is a top tier school. I knew that the network would be strong and long lasting. And I liked that it was located in New York, London, and Singapore because those are 3 major fintech hubs.
Yeah.
And so that's what brought me to the program. And I feel like all of the product knowledge and the technical knowledge that I was lacking, we've covered all of that in the course of the program. So it was a great decision for me.
That's fantastic. Thank you. It's great to hear about everyone's different personal journey coming into the program. I wanted to, and this touches a little bit on what Bailey was talking about, the different classes. But I was wondering, Zero, I'd love to start with you. Just to let everyone know on the call, you know, this group, we started last May, and we're approaching almost a year. They're going to graduate in May, which is so exciting. So we haven't finished all the modules yet, and we're still about to present on capstones. So there's a lot of exciting stuff still happening. But maybe, Zirley, could you tell me about any maybe class or classes that have had an impact on you thus far, you know, that you could share with the listeners?
Sure, thanks, Bronwen. It's really so difficult to kind of narrow it down because I think each block you feel like your mind is just being taken in a completely new direction, and you're exposed to a number of kind of different elements in, you know, from both these sides, from both Fin and the tech side. The classes that really stood out for me, I suppose, would be there was a guy by the name of Professor Ian D'Souza had a class on strategy, change, and fintech, and kind of combining all of these elements of business strategy, financial technology, and how that's resulting in change in the environment. I see in the chat there's a South African who pinged a question to me. So there's 2 South Africans on the course this year. Carla, you'll be happy to know. So we kind of hop on a jet every couple of weeks and head across the ocean. And you were asking about kind of the impact in South Africa, but I think it applies across the piece. You know, you can take those insights back to your environment and say, so I work in business strategy, but these are the elements of financial technology that can hopefully help and augment what I'm doing, either in my business or if my purpose is different in terms of access to finance, in terms of kind of democratization of financial services. So there's a broad cross-section of applicability. The other area that really excited me was Professor Kathleen DeRosa's classes on strategy, change, and fintech. And it was really, really cool because we looked at kind of startups that have done well, startups that have done not so well, and kind of you can start to see and develop trends and a bit of a science behind it, and also get a taste for the magic component too, which I thought was really, really powerful. And I think what's really helped me is through the classes, the peppering of kind of industry experts, you know, meeting with people in Singapore from markets, from large companies, meeting with people. We met with Visa in the United Kingdom, and just really having this seamless kind of integration of the working world and what we're studying, and constantly being able to pull it together. But those are the 2 classes. I think Professor DeRosa's class and Professor D'Souza's class. Don't tell the others I said that, because it was some of the
Exactly. Thank you. Meredith, any class or classes that have had an impact on you thus far?
Yeah, absolutely. Someone's gonna have to fill in the name of this professor because I'm blanking right now.
What class?
That taught platform strategy. He's like one of
Oh,
the,
Oh, Professor Joe Porak?
no, not Porak.
Joe Porak? Oh, Arun, his last name.
Arun. Yes.
Yes.
Arun, right.
So platform strategy was particularly impactful for me because it's such a unique approach and a delicate balance to try to build a platform product and understand all of the market dynamics that impact both sides of that market. So I found that class fascinating. I was locked in the whole time. I loved all of the assignments. Also, Professor Kathleen's class, FinTech Startup Case Studies, that was fascinating to look through all of the successes, the mistakes, analyze what drove either for all of the case studies that we did. And then for me, these classes weren't as exciting, but they were extremely impactful. I was learning the basics of SQL, R, and Python just because that was so new to me and such a valuable and necessary skill set to have if you're going to be walking the line between finance and technology.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. That's great. Bailey, how about you?
That's a really good, it's really difficult. So I feel like we've had so many classes and it's been a whirlwind. I was looking at the class schedule and just like remarking on how many things that we've learned and how many different, classes we've actually been in. So yeah, I absolutely agree with Meredith and Zuriel about Professor DeRosa's class. She going through the case studies for all of the different fintech firms and really getting into the specifics of why they succeeded or why they didn't in a very like clinical way was super interesting. I have two different ones though that I think have really stuck with me. The first one, when I keep thinking about classes that just like blew my mind, we had a class called Statistical Foundations of Machine Learning that was taught actually by the chair of the technology department here at Stern, Rohit Deo. And it was one of those classes where the pedagogy was so interesting. He was such a good professor, and he explained these unbelievably complicated concepts of machine learning and how large language models are actually built in a way that I think maybe I understood or thought I understood conceptually, but having him really go into the mathematical backing of all of that, it just melted my brain in a really nice way. So I think that one has definitely made a really big impact on me. And the other one is actually, and Meredith knows this, I've talked about this before, we had a class taught by Professor Bruce Buchanan called Ethics in FinTech. And that was one of the classes actually that got me really interested in the program, because I think as we enter this world of big data and of AI and algorithms doing things that maybe we don't always have the best understanding of, I think a really important thing about leadership in the fintech space, especially as we go forward, is figuring out, okay, do we actually have a foundational basis for understanding what the ethics of these things are, what sort of data we're using, what kind of questions we're relying on fintech to be answering versus not answering. And I think that was just really supportive in terms of how I'm thinking of my career going forward. And then also just philosophically, like ethics is just super interesting to me. So, and yeah, I would say ethics and the machine learning class for sure.
That's great. That's great. I do want to touch upon the capstone, because obviously it is a big part of your journey in the MSFT program. Just so the audience knows, our capstone project is a year-long project that gives all the students in the cohort the opportunity to tackle a business problem related to challenges in fintech, in all different types of, you guys are doing all different types of themes within fintech. I think Meredith and Bailey are on the same capstone. Do you guys want to start? You haven't presented on it yet because you're still in the middle of it, but maybe you could just tell us a little bit about your topic.
It was Meredith's topic that came to her in a coffee shop. So I'll have Meredith talk about the topic.
Okay, that would be great.
Sure. Yeah. So I guess the problem statement for our capstone is that private equity firms are looking at ways to expand into a lower investor tier. Historically, that's been impossible because of the complexity and the nuance in all of the funds and the reporting and the capital calls and distributions. And so there are tech-enabled ways to get from what are currently $10 million minimums down to maybe $50,000 minimums and just make it more amenable to an accreditor investor rather than a QUIB. And so we are looking at using fractionalization, structure, blockchain and tokenization technologies, platform strategy, and analyzing the impact of those technologies on bringing private equity investments down to a lower tier of investors.
Well, that's so interesting. That's great. Are you guys excited to finally be at the end and present on it soon? Yeah.
I think that
technically she's our group like manager, and so I'll let her answer the question.
I was voluntold as group manager, but it's been great. I think coming into this, I didn't know a lot about private equity. I've not been in the private equity space, but we have to formulate kind of capstone groups. And you have to do it pretty quickly. So, you're making friends in the program really early, you're talking, you're figuring out what your interests are. And, so we actually had kind of formed a group before we had really much of a topic. And Meredith came up with this idea. We've been working on it, like Bronwen had mentioned, for the last year or so. We actually just turned in our first draft of our capstone kind of final paper about a week ago, and it is definitely exciting. And I think the nice thing about the capstone that has been really rewarding and certainly different from a lot of the certificate type programs or some of the other maybe not Master of Science programs is that there is this academic rigor, there's research associated with it, and I think the program has been or is designed to be very flexible in terms of what you want to be researching for a capstone. Like there are some groups I know that I think are like building a proof of concept for a product. There are some who are doing, pure research. There are some who, are thinking about kind of fintech problems and like how we can address them. Whatever it is that you're interested in, I think that there's room for that, especially even as you design your capstone going forward. But like, I knew nothing about private equity. I've learned a lot about it, but my undergraduate degree is in public policy. So in talking about this capstone project and writing about private equity and about how it can be disrupted by fintech, the like ownership that I have over the paper is in writing about the like SEC regulation and like policy associated with private equity regulation. So it's nice, you can kind of grasp these things that maybe you have a bit more interest in, or maybe are a bit more relevant to your experience, even if something like private equity is something that you're totally new to. But yeah, it's been a learning experience. It's been great.
No, that's a great point, right? You're all coming from very different backgrounds, and this really gives you the opportunity to learn about different industries in that kind of setting. Cyril, would you share us your topic for your capstone?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I just maybe first to pick up on a point that Bailey made in terms of academic rigor, and I think like the capstone is such a critical component of the course, and it really is a kind of golden thread that goes through the entire year. I mean, you could pick up kind of a certificate course in fintech or whatever it is if you wanted to do something lighter, but I think that the capstone really does add that element of strength to the program. Was one component that helps to do that and helps you kind of earn that master's. So we're focusing on fraud. Fraud is a major challenge in the US and across the world. It's about a $2 trillion problem. And so what we're working on is a solution that helps to prevent the contagion of synthetic fraud in particular. So synthetic fraud is a newish type of fraud that's on the rise, given the advent of artificial intelligence and what's happening in that space. And so our platform, through collaboration and through the use of blockchain technology, helps you to reduce the losses associated with synthetic fraud. So at the moment, you could have a bad actor who commits fraud at one bank in the morning, one bank in the afternoon, and another the next day. And so the platform that we're working on, or the idea that we're working on, helps to prevent that. And it's been really cool because we've actually put it forward to the NYU kind of startup boot camp, and we were accepted and done our first boot camp round. So it was quite a nice experience, kind of all around being at NYU. Yes, it was really exciting balancing work and life and boot camp and studying and all sorts of things. But it was really great to kind of have that opportunity.
Oh, I'm so excited for you. I was actually going to just ask a similar question because I know in other programs, similar programs that Stern has run over the years, sometimes capstone ideas can actually turn into something much, much bigger post-graduation, whether it's being, a competition or maybe even being published. If you guys decide to submit your ideas to different publications, sometimes that can be a way to, it goes on and on. That's fantastic.
And I think there is something, sorry if you don't mind, Bronwen,
No,
there is something
please.
unique about the NYU kind of ecosystem in terms of their ability to, so yes, you're in for an academic program, right? But there's something unique about that ecosystem that is built to help students kind of build on their ideas, to kind of water the seeds and to help you at every step along the way. I think it's kind of the classroom we sit in, there's a grouping, there must be about kind of 50 or 60 startups, hey guys, who have kind of been birthed at NYU. And you can see that kind of that idea of your capstone, if you want to progress it, there is the ability to do so.
That's fantastic. And was that through the Berkeley Center, Surreal, or through another group? Because there's a lot of so many different that I had to. It's so many
So
different
it's
entrepreneurs.
NYUE, which I think is in the same lab in our Stern building. But we did go to the Berkeley kind of area to
Right.
they have kind of various programs that are linked. Yeah.
That's great. That's great. And I do think that as this program grows over the years, we want to keep exposing you guys to all those different entrepreneurial opportunities at the university. I think that thank you for bringing that up. I just wanted to, I have a couple, we have another question, but I do want to just say to the audience is, if you have questions for the panelists, please feel free at this time to type into the Q&A box. If you have specific questions for any of the panelists, they will be happy to answer. But while people are typing in, I did want to ask, this is a question that anyone can really answer. But it's questions I get, particularly from prospective students. And one is, someone wrote in that they have a finance background and they're wondering how difficult it was to learn the more technical courses, like particularly the coding that is in the curriculum. Do you guys want to, I don't know, Bailey, can we start with you? Like, what has your experience been, or were you a little nervous at first, or what advice would you give to someone that's concerned about this?
That was the same question that I had when I joined the program. I said, so just a kind of a bit more background on me. As I mentioned earlier, I was a public policy undergraduate major. I have been in revenue generating positions, and so like my technical expertise, and honestly, even some of my more nuanced financial expertise is not, I would say, my strength. I'm a very curious person and I have a lot of capacity to learn, but definitely not a stronger suit of mine, I would say, historically. And so that's certainly something that I was a little bit more concerned about when I joined this program. So much so that I actually ended up taking a data science little course kind of boot camp certificate program beforehand, just to make sure that I was really rounded off. But I would say the truth of the matter is the program is built in a way that it really understands that everybody has different backgrounds that are coming in.
Right.
The nice thing is that it's taught as a hybrid between kind of the finance faculty and the tech faculty, and the student body really reflects that. There are some with more technical background, there are some with more of a financial background. And so anytime you're taking the class, I would say that it really appeals to kind of the middle ground of hey, you know a lot about this, great, this is going to be an easier class for you, versus, okay, maybe you don't know so much, so this is going to be a bit more of an introductory class for you. The classes are really good about kind of catering to wherever it is that you are. I would say that don't let that be a deterrent if you're worried that your technical expertise is not that high. The program is really good at getting you up to speed. There are tools these days that can help you, level up really quickly. But I would say I was afraid too. I have realized now in March, after doing this for almost a year, that I didn't really have any reason to be nervous. NYU is a world-class institution for a reason. It's really good at teaching these things. So that's my advice. Yeah.
That's great. I'm glad you answered, because I do recall having that conversation with you.
Yeah,
That's great.
I remember that. Yeah.
Did you guys want to add anything to that at all?
We can hear Olive snoring.
Oh, so I was really worried about that. I've been kicking my dog under the table. If you can hear my dog snoring, I have a French bulldog. She's asleep under my desk. And her eyes are open. She's awake. So this is confusing to me.
I love it. That's great. Did you guys, Zuriel or Mary, did you want to add did you have any of those same concerns or?
Maybe quickly. I mean, I think that what was great for me is maybe just to add is kind of, there are a number of people who are brand new to Python and SQL and so on. So the course, if you're accepted, then you get access to a number of preparation resources, which are really good. So that kind of, it brings everybody up to kind of a base level. But what was cool is that, like, I found in class, the guy I sat next to, for example, had been doing Python for the last 10 years. So he was kind of an old hand in it, but he found value in it from a different perspective as well. So in terms of how to create the models, how to build, so what was it must be really difficult to kind of get someone like me who's just kind of entering the game in terms of Python, and somebody else who's got a lot more experience. And so that was what was quite interesting. Was it tough? Yes. Did I have to spend a little bit more time on those courses than I did on some of the other courses? Yes. But I'm probably better off for a stretch afterwards.
Yeah. That's helpful. That's helpful. I wanted another question that I thought would be actually, so here's a question that just came through. I will thank you, Alberto. Someone wrote in that they are a software developer and they've worked in agricultural insurance for over 10 years. And thoughts on how the program might present opportunities for them. Any ideas with someone with a more technical background like that?
Yeah, so I can pick up. I mean, so my background is insurance, Alberta. I used to work for an underwriter. I was with the second largest general insurance underwriter in South Africa, and then I led the startup of the newest commercial insurer in the country. So there is, from an insurance perspective, there are a number of opportunities. I think that you can, but it really just depends on in terms of what you're focused on. So if you're focused on agriculture, for example, is something like parametrics of interest to you, and how you use parametric insurance is kind of the machine learning component. I'd imagine would be huge value to you. And we had kind of two separate courses that were focused on machine learning, and that plays a huge role already in areas like motor insurance and property insurance more broadly. The property side could have kind of spillover into the agri space. And then the third thing I'd highlight is just in terms of artificial intelligence and the use of AI, particularly as generative AI has taken off in the last year. I cannot believe we, by luck or fate, landed in this program in 2023, 24, because AI wasn't, remember when we applied, I didn't know what ChatGPT was. It was just kind of a start. And now the use cases that have just started to kind of blossom. So I think those are three key areas. And then I think if you think about blockchain as well and blockchain contracting, particularly in the reinsurance space, underwriter to reinsurer, there are also some opportunities there. So I think that there are a number of ways for the program to help you create opportunities. And to help you kind of position yourself in a better way, with a broad cross section of employers, or if you're looking at starting up something yourself. So if your game and energy is focused on kind of the democratization of agricultural insurance and emerging economies, particularly with something like climate change peaking at the levels that it is now, right? But we don't know if it's peaking, but kind of continuing on, the impact of climate on agriculture, insurance, and the most marginalized farmers is huge. And I do believe insurance has a role to play there. And I do think there's a lot to get from this course if an idea like that was something you wanted to bring to life.
Thank you for answering that, Zuriel. question that just I thought of as well that, and this is, I think, the answer will be individual to all of you is, have you, so far in this program's journey, because I think, you still have a little bit more time, but so far, do you feel that the program is helping you more now in your current role, or do you feel it will enable you down the road to pivot in some way? I know there's fintech is changing so rapidly, but any thoughts on that? Meredith, do you want to answer that one?
Sure. So I think the term fintech may fade in the future because I think that financial services and technology are not mutually exclusive and won't be ever again. And so I think if you work in any form of financial services, whether it's banking, insurance, anything related to that, I think that you're surrounded by technology constantly, and decisions that are being made by management involve new technologies like machine learning. Maybe they're looking at blockchain solutions. Maybe they're trying to understand, embedded banking types of services. So I think that any leader in the financial services industry has to have a comprehensive understanding of all of these new technologies. And in my current role, as a lot of these questions come up, I can better understand what's going on around me and the changes that are being made and have an opinion on some of these things instead of kind of sitting back and watching them happen around me. And so that's in a traditional financial services sense. That's how it's already been beneficial to me in my current role. And I do plan to pivot back into a fintech product role where I'll feel much better equipped having the technical part of this education to apply in the future.
That's fantastic.
I-
Bailey, do you want to answer and maybe actually bring up to circle back to the point you made earlier in the webinar about it's just the courses are just more than what it is listed in the curriculum.
Absolutely. So really, I have two very real examples of ways that classes have actually helped me in my current role, both from a technical perspective and just kind of business concepts. So one of the classes we had to take was database design. So how are big databases actually designed, primary keys, joining keys, like data schema generally. And I think that I knew a little bit about data, but in terms of how it's actually stored, this is something that I learned for the first time. And now as a data partnerships professional, I can actually go in and do data evaluation and have conversations with the data folks on these prospective partners without actually involving our data team. So it frees up their ability so that I don't actually have to pull them away from meetings. I can go in and share screen with the partners and ask to see their schema and ask about primary keys. Like I have absolutely made my team's time just more efficient. So that was one very clear example. So that's a little bit more on the technical side, but then the opposite is also true. If it's not technical, we actually have a lot of classes. I think that Zuriel and Meredith had mentioned earlier, one of which is called platform strategy. So the economics of a platform-based business are very different than just a traditional kind of value chain where you have, a seller and a buyer. A platform obviously is connecting sellers and buyers, and they're both customers of one another. It's a completely different concept with, very different economics and financials. And so understanding that from a business strategy perspective in a really nuanced way actually helped me write a proposal for a product that Moody's is going to be launching that is more platform-based. And so that was actually a really cool thing to get to actually repurpose some of my work in that platform strategy class to some of the senior leaders at Moody's to get to show them, hey, this is something that I've been thinking about. So that was a really cool thing, but literally has improved my actual career as I'm doing it now and will in the future. But that's exactly the thing is you sort of look at the course schedule and you see like, okay, database design, platform strategy, what does that really mean? And the truth of the matter is it is so helpful and it is so applicable. And even if you can't think of a way in which it could be applicable, it will just find its way to being relevant. At least that is kind of what I have realized in the last year or so.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's a great story.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Zuriel, any thoughts on, how the program has made you think differently in your current role, or how you want to use it later on?
For sure. I mean, I think Bronwen, it's been so interesting because I think that the format of learning, not like compounded with what we're covering. So the actual material, a lot of which Bailey has spoken about already, is quite interesting because I think you kind of get this week, right, where it's intense, it's lectures, it's 8 in the morning to 6 in the evening, and then you've got a capstone and da 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 da. And then you've got this period of a couple of weeks in between where you've got some assignments and that, but going through the assignments is almost a way to kind of compound the learnings and the understanding. And so often like aspects like the data visualization component, the Python component and what that can be used for. Just even kind of some of the modeling that we've done in Excel around machine learning and more broadly has helped in my day-to-day. So I think that's the one aspect. There is a real time for me personally. There's been kind of a real time element that I've been able to speak of kind of up and down the chain. So to my kind of leadership and also to my team in kind of challenging and fleshing out. I think that they probably are not excited every time I kind of land from New York again because I've got a new idea or there's a new something we need to do or there's a new area we need to focus on. And so it has been helpful from that perspective. But I also think I think it was Meredith who mentioned just having a seat at the table. And so in my mind, the table's just gotten bigger, or the tables that I'm invited to and can speak at and what I can speak on has changed through this period, and it's spurred an additional level of interest. So I don't believe that it will be concentrated in this program because I now read different stuff. I'm now focusing my attention into different areas. I'm now learning and probing deeper into specific areas, and that is kind of the gift that keeps on giving me.
Oh, that's great. That's great. That's great to hear. We have one, I'm cognizant of time. We have one more question from a listener. The question is, I'm not sure who would like to take this one, but have there been any eureka moments throughout this program on how fintech can be leveraged to bridge the poverty lines and truly achieve financial inclusion in underserved communities? And they said could be for anyone. It's a big one.
It's a really big one. I would say for me personally, yes. So one of the reasons that I was most interested in this program, just like I think from a personal perspective in terms of my own journey with learning, is that I am really interested in financial inequality. I mean, I think the United States has kind of been my context for that. Obviously the wealth gap is widening. And so I know that fintech is a scalable solution that can really impact a lot of lives. And so I didn't really know kind of to the point of the question, like how those dots could necessarily be connected. But I think that definitely is a big part of the program is like, okay, this is what technology's capabilities are. These are how they are regulated. This is how we could actually get this technology into the hands of people who maybe don't have it. That I think was also a really big part of us going to Singapore, and learning about the unbanked communities, how actually you can get financial technology in the hands of people who are largely underbanked. Learning about like M-Pesa, learning about these companies that, okay, like if somebody doesn't have access to a computer, what is the best way that we can actually get financial services to their community, and like how can this be helpful for them? So there's a lot that the program covers in terms of financial inclusion. I would say that like there have been a lot of eureka moments in terms of like, oh, this is something that like in the next 15 years, this is going to be solved for. I don't know that I had any eureka moments of how to solve it myself, but I think just seeing the kind of the promise of like, oh, this is actually something that could really change the paradigm of how we think about financial inclusion. Meredith, Zuriel, I don't know if you all have anything, maybe more specific about that.
I think one eureka moment for me was just realizing how much opportunity for fintech, for I guess the impact of fintech exists in developing countries, and how it's actually easier, maybe faster for them to adopt innovative products because they don't have these massive incumbents already in place.
Mhm.
In the US, we have a very established financial system, and it's going to take forever to change that, to adopt the fintech that could level the playing field in a lot of ways, even though there's, I guess, less leveling to be done in this country. But in developing places, there aren't those incumbents to have to break through. And so there's a lot of opportunity outside of that, which is, yeah, and we've learned a lot about a lot of different examples around that.
One
Right.
other comment I'll just make really quickly is that something that was so cool was that we actually had, I'm blanking on his name, maybe Zuriel or Meredith will remember, but this was in Singapore, I believe, one of the senior directors or leadership team members at PayPal came in and spoke to us about his role specifically was in getting PayPal to be used in countries where maybe they had a pretty significantly underbanked population. So his entire job was in researching the population, figuring out, okay, how can we get this technology into the hands of people, in these countries and in these communities that maybe is very different than the United States or very different than, North America generally or Europe. And so yes, it was very interesting. There's a lot that the program focuses on about financial inclusion.
Thank you. I wanted to ask everyone, just in just looking at the time, well, number one, thank you for everyone. This has been amazing. Any imparting advice for prospective students that are thinking about applying to the MS in FinTech program? Any advice for people as they're thinking through putting yourself in their shoes around this time last year or a little before? Cyril, do you want me to put you in the spot?
Yeah, no, sorry, that's perfect. I had a bit of an internet instability issue there. My apologies. But as I understood your question, Bronwen, was just kind
Any
of
any imparting advice for anyone considering
yeah.
the program?
Yeah, what's interesting is, so maybe if I kind of transcend back, I remember getting accepted and then thinking, geez, am I going to accept my acceptance now? Because this is now this big thing. Because now I started planning the calendar out and I started planning the days out, and I then felt like the kind of weight of what it was going to be to study and be a part of something like this. Because it's NYU is a big institution. There's kind of clear goals, expectations, guidelines, etc., that need to be met. And I remember actually going into my CEO's office and saying, "Listen, I've been accepted, but I don't think I can do this. There's too much happening at the moment. I'd just taken on a new role, and I'm involved in one or two other things." And he said to me, "Cyril, there's never a great time in life. There's never a perfect time in life for anything." And he said, kind of take the plunge, get it done. You've got my support, you've got our support. So let's kind of make it happen. And it was, I just needed that little last minute kick to kind of help me through everything that I'd been doing and putting together over the last couple of years. And so my reflection would be, like, the year goes by so quickly. I cannot believe that as we reflect, we're kind of a month and a bit, maybe 2 months away from finalizing it. And if I look at how I've grown over that year, if I look at what I have been exposed to, if I look at what I know, but I think most importantly for me, if I look at the people I've met in our cohort of kind of, I think we've just gone 30. It's a small focused group where you really get the opportunity to get to know each other, get to spend time with each other, and really kind of work on some really cool and different stuff. And if that and a lot of what we've said this afternoon sounds like it's for you, then you should probably reach out and have a conversation. And maybe it's not, and maybe there's something different. Maybe you want to kind of think about yourself in a different direction. But if kind of the areas that we've spoken about today, I haven't, and I think Bailey made the conversation, been able to find a similar format or kind of degree that has the rigor and focus that this has delivered for me so far. So yeah, a few different themes, but that's kind of what I'd say.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you. Meredith,
My
or
advice-
yeah,
Yeah, go ahead, Meredith.
Mine is around the hesitation around finances. That was a big issue for me. I'm 29, single, paying for this on my own, no company support. And so I really had to make sure that the ROI was going to be there. And I think that was my biggest hesitation, but it is definitely there. As Zuriel said, the amount that I've grown over this last year will pay dividends for the rest of my career. And the community that we've built. And this is, I think our inaugural cohort is probably smaller than future cohorts.
Mhm.
So I think that those, the network that future classes will obtain will be even more valuable.
Yeah.
But even with our little cohort, it's been definitely.
and you guys are the pioneers though, right? That are on right path, which is amazing.
Yeah.
Bailey?
Yeah, I have two pieces of advice. I think the first one, speaking just as somebody who, when they applied, was maybe a bit worried about their, I don't know, technical expertise, or just that the program would be, so far and above my head that it'd be so challenging. And I think the questions of self-doubt are very real, and a lot of the time, sometimes. And so I think if you're worried about that, I would say don't be. If you're on this panel and you've lasted the hour, obviously you're a very curious and diligent person. I think that give yourself credit and understand that it's nice to do hard things, and that you can remind yourself you can do hard things. The program is very supportive. So like, don't feel like you can't do it, because I think you absolutely can. That's the first one. And the second one, kind of part and parcel with the first one, is this isn't a certificate program, right? It is a Master of Science degree, and it has the rigor associated with a Master of Science degree. So I think you have to really ask yourself if you are ready to, to dig in and to learn. And if that's something that you really want, or if, maybe you just kind of want a certificate or a piece of paper. Not to say that that is not a valuable thing, but the expectations for each of them are very different in terms of what you have to give. So it's not impossible, as Uriel said. The year goes very quickly, but it is certainly, it's a heavier lift. So make sure that that's something that you're really ready to do, and that you're wanting to do, and that you're expecting. And if that sounds interesting to you, then I would say go for it.
That's great. Thank you. And I want to say not only thank you, but I'd love to, I'd say in a year or two from now, I'd love to bring you guys back as an alumni panel to hear, how everything's been since you graduated, and really what you've taken away from the program, because I think that'll be really interesting as well, to hear from you guys in a couple years' time. Thank you so much. This has been so amazing. And I want to, for everyone listening, thank you for giving us your hour of your time. And please do reach out to our admissions team with any questions you have about the application process. We are available Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, to answer any questions you have. Thank you, Zuriel, Meredith, and Bailey. You guys have been amazing. And have a wonderful rest of your day. And thank you again for your support with this program. And good luck to you, and almost graduate. Happy graduation, almost. Yeah.
So close, so close.
So
Thanks,
close.
everybody. Great to join.
Good luck to everyone making a decision. All the best.
Good luck.
All the best. Thank you so much, guys.
Of course.
Bye now.
Bye.
Bye-bye.